This obviously isn't the surface of Mars. It's a beautiful nature reserve here in the UK. But if it were Mars, then out there across its red, rusty sands, you could find more than a dozen robots.
Mars is a planet inhabited entirely by machines. Only two are currently roaming, the Curiosity rover and the Perseverance rover. But the rest are still there, sitting silently, abandoned exactly where their missions came to an end years ago.
Out of all of them, however, there is one that stands out from the rest, because it's not your typical lander or rover. It was a machine designed to explore Mars in a completely new way. Any ideas?
Of course, it was Ingenuity, NASA's Mars helicopter, designed to fly across the Martian landscape at speed. But today, Ingenuity sits completely still. It's dead in the sands of Mars.
A stark contrast to the noise and dust it once kicked up on a planet known for its deep, eerie quietness. 2 years ago, Ingenuity sadly landed for the final time. But before we get to that last flight, we need to go back to the beginning.
If there was such thing as a Martian, and they had watched on that day in 2021 as Ingenuity was deployed from the Perseverance rover, it would have looked like it was being born from the belly of a robotic mother. It was lowered carefully onto the sandy surface, unfolding as it prepared itself for something no machine had ever done before. Of course, now we know how successful it was, but Ingenuity was essentially a test at the time. It was a proof of concept, a machine built specifically to answer a single unknown question. Could we fly on Mars?
It's a question you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, that must be really easy, right? We've got drones buzzing around everywhere here on Earth, just send one of those. But it's a far more difficult problem than it sounds.
You see, the atmosphere on Mars is incredibly thin, just 1% the density of Earth's. To put that into perspective, it's like trying to fly a helicopter here on Earth at an altitude of around 30 kilometers, nearly 3 times higher than a commercial airliner flies. And so Ingenuity had to be incredibly light, made of materials like carbon fiber, foam, and aluminium. In fact, they managed to make it so light that on Earth it weighed only 1.8 kilograms, about as light as a standard 2-slice toaster.
But engineering a lightweight aircraft was just the start. It still had to get off the ground.
And so it had 2 carbon fiber rotors, each measuring 1.2 meters long, that had to spin at over 2,500 revolutions per minute. That's roughly 5 times faster than a typical helicopter on Earth. It also had to fly itself, because depending on where Mars is in its orbit, signals from Earth can take anywhere from around 3 minutes to over 20 minutes to arrive there, meaning it's impossible to fly it live. So Ingenuity had to rely entirely on its own systems. And so it had multiple onboard computers that could process pre-programmed commands, onboard cameras and sensors to navigate and analyze the terrain as it flew over it, as this video shows. And all of this had to be powered by a small solar panel above its rotors that charged up its lithium batteries for powered flight during the day, but also kept it warm during the freezing -60°C Martian nights.
Ingenuity was completely alone on Mars, like a bird left in the nest. But that didn't matter, because it was engineered to thrive.
It went on to fly an incredible 72 times, 67 times more than it was ever meant to, travelling a total distance of 17 kilometers over 1,000 Martian days. It really did show us that this was the future of Mars exploration.
But like all things on Mars, eventually the planet's unwelcoming grip takes hold.
as Ingenuity found out in January 2024, just before it sent its final image. I'll show you that in just a second, but first.
Mars is a dead world, but imagine if this wasn't Mars, if this were a future Earth. One question then would matter more than anything else. How do you start again? Aha, found it. This is the book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding Civilization by Hungry Minds, the sponsor of today's video. I've always been fascinated by how the world works, and the book, which was a bestseller in 2023, brings all that together into one place. It covers everything, from medicine to mechanics to music, even how societies are structured. But what I really like is that it never really overwhelms you. It gives you the essence of each complex idea without flooding you with too much information. Just the context, the building blocks of how everything fits together. And visually, it's just incredible. Every page is packed with these detailed illustrations, a really unique mix of engineering-style drawings and almost medieval artwork. I've genuinely never seen another book like it. And there's even a hidden quest built into the book, which I won't spoil, but it adds this extra layer of curiosity. So, if you're even slightly curious about how the world works, or you know someone that is and wants a great gift, I definitely recommend checking out The Book by Hungry Minds. There's a link in the description, and you can use my code ROBSPACE10 for a discount.
Discovering what happened to Ingenuity ended up coming from two places. The first was from the helicopter itself. Images from its onboard camera showed something wasn't right. In the shadows of its rotors, can you see it? At least one of its tips had been damaged.
But it was the second view that confirmed the full picture. The camera on its robotic mother, the Perseverance rover.
Looking on from a distance, Perseverance captured Ingenuity stranded on the side of a sand dune. And from that angle, the image confirmed the worst. One of its rotors had completely broken off. In fact, Perseverance even managed to find the missing piece lying in the sand about 15 meters away. And at that moment, it was clear, like a bird with a broken wing, Ingenuity would never fly again. There was nothing that could be done to fix it.
So, what happened? Why did it suddenly break after 3 years of defying the odds? Well, Ingenuity met its end not through mechanical wear or the brutal Martian cold, but the failure of perception.
During its 70-second flight, the helicopter drifted over a field of near-featureless sand ripples in the Jezero crater. Without the distinct surface landmarks its navigation camera required, the system likely lost its lock on the ground, miscalculating its velocity and descending into a hard sideways landing. As it struck the sloped terrain at high speed, the sudden pitch and roll forced the rotor blades, which were still spinning at 2500 RPM, beyond their structural limits. The resulting bending loads likely damaged all 4 carbon fiber rotors in a final, violent moment, grounding the historic Mars helicopter forever.
Ingenuity was never supposed to last 3 years. It was a 30-day gamble that turned into a 1,000-day marathon, proving that we could not only fly on another world, but thrive in its skies.
But the broken rotors wasn't just an ending. They turned into a blueprint. Engineers now had a new set of problems to solve. How to give a machine eyes that can see in an almost featureless desert, and feet that can land on a shifting slope. For more than 2 years now, Ingenuity has been stranded on that fateful slope, abandoned by its robotic mother, Perseverance, and everyone on Earth.
If you could stand next to it right now, it would be eerily quiet. There's very little wind to whistle through its rotors, just the slow rain of red dust.
Every decade, perhaps a millimeter or so of Mars will settle on Ingenuity. In 100 years, it might be a mound. In 1,000, just a secret. Ingenuity isn't just a wreck, it's becoming a fossil of the Silicon Age. Protected rather than destroyed by sandstorms and temperature changes over long periods of time, a piece of human engineering frozen in time.
But while Ingenuity sleeps, its data has already escaped. It's currently sitting on the servers at NASA, being used to build something much, much bigger. Sure, we now know that there were problems that needed fixing, but for the first time, we also now know that flying on Mars isn't just possible, it's actually practical. And that changes things.
Because based on the success of this small helicopter, NASA has announced plans to develop a new mission, Skyfall. A plan for not one, but possibly 6 Ingenuity-style helicopters to be sent to Mars in late 2028. Instead of a single experimental aircraft, these would be multiple vehicles working together, each equipped with far more advanced technology. We're talking ultra-high-resolution cameras to map the terrain in incredible detail, along with instruments like ground-penetrating radar to search beneath the surface for ice. These helicopters wouldn't just explore, they would act as scouts, flying ahead of missions, analysing the landscape, identifying the safest and most useful locations for humans to eventually land.
And when you think about that, it's quite remarkable. Before a human ever sets foot on Mars, it's likely that aircraft like Ingenuity would have already surveyed the ground beneath them, choosing landing sites, finding resources, and shaping how those missions unfold. And all of that traces back to one small helicopter that was only ever meant to fly 5 times. That isn't me, that's AI. And the reason I'm showing you that is because content like this is becoming increasingly common, especially in space and astronomy. But V101 Space is built differently. This channel is researched, written and narrated by me, a real human who actually checks sources and cares about the stories behind each video. That's why I created the V101 Alliance, a membership offer that for less than the price of a coffee each month allows people who values this kind of content the chance to support it directly, and in return get meaningful perks. So if you'd like to join this mission and become a part of the V101 Alliance, become a member today for just $2 by clicking the join button that's located next to the subscribe button. I'd love to welcome you, and hopefully I'll be seeing your name in one of my future videos very soon.